There's a lot of
So
Microsoft this time, but this is jumping into our other topics for people that are watching just this part. But if you're interested in hearing more details about some of this Microsoft stuff here, go back and watch the previous part, which is probably a pretty long one, but there's a lot of interesting stuff there.
yeah. So first thing, this one's pretty quick, but so we've talked about the whole issue with Game Pass, xCloud, and like streaming games on your iPhone.
Yep.
But there was always something else that Microsoft had, because Microsoft was already working on um, something that Sony's actually had for years, of the ability to stream games from your console to your mobile device.
Yeah, right. They've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah. And Microsoft is finally releasing that functionality in their new Xbox app. And that is allowed under the rules of um, Apple's App Store.
Right.
And so you will now be able to stream your Xbox Game Pass games from your Xbox. Really, the only difference between this and the xCloud thing is that your Xbox has to be connected to the internet when you want to play,
Right. Yeah, I mean most people that are going that
and you have to have
direction.
the game downloaded.
Yeah. And what I'd be interested to see is Microsoft to eventually do what Steam's done and been able to make it so you can stream from PC to your phone and other stuff like that. That'd be kind of interesting too.
I don't really think there's much of a need for that. I mean, yeah, sure, the graphics might be a little better, I guess,
Well,
but
but
like,
I'm saying it because for their exclusives, there's plenty of people on PC that like as a PC gamer, you just shouldn't buy an Xbox. Most
oh,
of
I
you know,
agree, yeah.
yeah. And so like in that instance though, if you want to stream Xbox games, but you're not wanting to buy an Xbox, it'd be nice to have the PC to be able to do it.
But can't Steam Link stream games that aren't actual Steam games as long as you have them added to Steam?
I haven't messed with it enough. You might be right though. That might be the case.
At which point, it's something I'm sure Microsoft will do eventually, but it just seems
Yeah.
low priority when
I'm
it's
not
already.
sure though, because the way Microsoft does their game installs is a little bit quirky and annoying, just like the way you download movies through Microsoft Store is, and so it may not work with Steam. I haven't tested that. I should.
Yeah.
At some point, I will. I'm actually planning to build a streaming server, so yeah, that'd be something I'd like to test and maybe do a video
Yeah.
on. But anyway,
But the other thing, so we talked about this rumor before, but we now have it confirmed. The pricing of external storage on the Xbox.
it's bad.
$220 for a 1 terabyte SSD.
I don't even.
In my opinion, this is absurd. Now, it has an advantage over PlayStation 5's method of expansion in that it's real damn easy to slot in. You just put it in the back. You
There's
don't have
not
to
any work.
deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's almost a third the speed of the Samsung 980 Pro for $10 less than the Samsung.
Yeah, I was
980.
actually just looking that up on here.
You're looking at 2.4 gigabytes per second versus 7
Yeah.
for $10. Like, I'm sorry, it doesn't cost that much for that enclosure.
No, it doesn't. They're making a huge profit on the drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, like...
And what really confuses me real quick, why is a 2.4 gigabyte per second SSD using PCIe Gen 4?
That doesn't really make sense. There's not... Well...
It seems like just a little bit of a waste of money.
Like, they could just use PCIe Gen 3.
Yeah.
Well, they already have Gen 4 lanes, though, right? Like, it's running a Zen chip, so it has Gen 4. There's not Gen 3 lanes.
Yeah.
Do we know how many lanes, though? Is it a full 4X? Have we been told yet? Because if it's a full 4X, then that's pretty stupid. They should be using a 2 lanes. And while 2 lanes would be kind of... I don't know. I kind of understand it because they usually won't do, like, 3 lanes, right? And 2 lanes would be cutting it a little short. I don't know. It's a little bit weird.
But yeah, let's go back to the pricing of it though. It's like, if you're looking at buying a Xbox Series S, I think that's where this is the most problematic.
Yeah.
As of right now, Microsoft has not announced any other storage options for this. Like no 512 gig, no 256 gig. So your only option for storage increase brings you above the cost of a Series X.
Yeah, which is just...
Yes, you have 512 gigs more storage in that case, but you realistically, like 512 is, in my opinion, not enough for most people.
I completely
1
agree.
terabyte is much more workable for most everybody.
Yeah.
And
this is this is a new console generation. These are supposed to last a while. I mean, Microsoft iterates a lot, but like 512 gigs is going to be like what happens when 4 years from now we have 250 gigabyte games? I
yeah,
mean, like that's a realm in the realm of possibility, right?
seeing as how Call of Duty is already over 200.
Yeah, exactly. And like even with the efficiency improvements of being able to use an SSD, like
Yeah.
games are still going to keep getting bigger, especially if we're expected to have higher resolution displays and stuff. So
Mhm.
it's really weird. And I actually wanted to mention too, I was thinking of 3.0 speeds, PCIe 3.0, not 4.0. So they should have used two 4.0 lanes because that's 2 gigabytes a second per lane. So that would have
Mhm.
been 4 gigabytes a second versus I was thinking 3.0 is 1 gig. I was thinking 3.0 was 500 megs. So
Yeah.
anyway, that was my bad. But it doesn't really make sense for them to use a full 4 lanes. Obviously they need to use more than SATA. Like SATA would be too slow, but
Yeah.
it's just it's a weird. It puts it in a weird position because like you know they're making big profit off that drive, and it's still probably not going to provide the same experience as the internal drive.
No, probably.
And maybe, yeah. Well, and then the other issue is I'm trying to remember exactly what I was wanting to say, but I feel like there needs to be more options there than just 1 terabyte because for some people 1 terabyte's not enough, right? And so then you run into the issue of like, are they going to release a 2 terabyte and is it going to be $400?
Yeah. Well, and like the other thing I wanted to get at though is like, because like realistically, like in my opinion, I don't really see the people that would need like let's say a 2 terabyte expansion card
Mm-hmm.
that necessarily making sense. I think that like even if not for this, cost efficiency wise, it would just almost always make more sense to get the amount of expansion you need to balance your current game load and then get a cheap like external USB SSD as archival because you can get way more storage
Right,
for the same
right.
price
And then
if
just
you
you
were to
just
go that
copy over when you want to play them.
route. Yeah. But the other thing that I want to get, so if this is only $10 cheaper for the 1 terabyte model than a 980 Pro, is the 500 gig or 512 gig model that I'm assuming Microsoft will eventually release also only going to be $10 cheaper? Because then you'd be looking at like $140 for 1 terabyte or for 512 gigs, which means for a
Yeah.
Series S and 512 gigs of storage, which puts you at the same amount of storage as a Series X, you're looking at only saving $60. And it's a
Right.
much lower spec console.
Yeah, that's I don't like that pricing. I feel like this is almost they're trying to make too much profit on it. And I mean, we know consoles like it's been a long-standing thing where they try to make more money on the accessories, but they're I feel like they're going too far here
Yeah.
because they're buying
And
these in bulk. Like that's another thing to keep in mind is like Microsoft doesn't pay the pricing you would pay on Newegg for an equivalent SSD. They pay a lot less than that.
yeah.
And so you're looking at like they're making a potentially 50% profit,
Hmm.
which is just kind of insane.
Yeah.
And then
Um,
Sony's like, just as long as it's fast enough, stick it in there.
yeah. Like, and so like that's the other thing. So like when you compare PS5 and Xbox, like yes, at launch, SSDs for the PS5, like the 980 Pro, which was announced, that one will probably be the first drive validated for PS5.
Yeah,
That's
which
my
we'll
guess.
go over the speeds briefly in just a second. But
But that drive is way faster and it's $10 more. So like yeah, you're
mhm.
spending as much, but again, it's way faster.
And I'm
And
surprised that like its pricing is pretty great. Like with the 980 Pro, I will say that its pricing is pretty good.
yeah,
But
but also like if you're trying to figure out how much external or storage expansion on the PlayStation 5 is going to cost, if a 980 Pro is 230, probably by the end of this year, there will be drives from other companies that are under 220 for 1 terabyte. Because 980
mhm.
Pro or the Pro lineup tends to be more expensive than most things.
No, yeah, the Pro lineup is insane. Which, like I said, we'll get into numbers here in a minute. But like Also, like, let's look here at an SSD, which is slower than the one Microsoft is talking about. But we have an ADATA Swordfish. I love that name. It's a 1 terabyte SSD, 1800 by 1200 read-write performance. So, like, that's getting kind of close to what Microsoft can offer, right? And this is a $100 drive. So you start to think about the pricing there of just how ridiculous that is in comparison. You know, $100 drive. So let's say Microsoft can pay $100 for this. They're making more than a 50% profit for a drive at that speed. It's just ridiculous.
Well, keep in mind, they also have to pay Seagate because they're working with Seagate on it.
Right. No, I get that. I'm saying, no, like, Microsoft's cost from Seagate for the drive is probably like $100.
Yeah.
So they're making an awful lot of money on it. Whereas I would expect them to sell it this same drive for like 140, which would be a lot more reasonable for a console gamer. So I don't know. It's weird, but I think, speaking of drives, I want to spit some numbers at you guys about the 980 Pro, because this thing is a beast. And if it is this good and maybe goes down in price just a little bit, maybe for my next year storage upgrade, I'm going to buy 4 or 8 of them. The 980 Pro. I'm going to go over numbers provided by PC Per. I trust their storage testing pretty good. Alan Malventano isn't there anymore, so smaller, not quite, but they're still pretty great. He kind of showed him how to do it. So, Crystal Disk Mark 7.0, 980 Pro is getting 6.7 gigabytes of read speed, and this is sequentials, to be clear. So that is right up in that 7 gigabyte range, which is just crazy. And that's for queue depth of 8. So if we want to go to something a little more realistic, queue depth of 2, it's still 6.5 gigabytes per second of sustained sequential reads. That's insane. And then the write speeds for, again, queue depth of 2, 4.8 gigabytes per second. And then I'll just throw a couple of, here's a 4K random 16 thread benchmark. I'll just read the queue depth 2 numbers again. Read speed is 1.7 gigabytes a second, and write speed is 2.4. That's again for 4 kilobyte randomization, read write testing. That's insane. So I do want to say that, like, we're seeing some SSDs come out now that are properly taking full advantage of that PCIe 4.0, and it's just absolutely insane. And I hope that this gets certification. I hope it is the first one to get certification from Sony.
I'd be really surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah, because this thing's just so fast. So it's pretty amazing.
That, and it's like, you know, they don't use any crazy heat sinks or weird sizing or anything.
It's like a normal SSD. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it should do it. Pretty crazy. So one thing I wanted to mention before we get into our tiny news, which will be like probably 4 minutes, but Microsoft a long time ago, which we might have talked about it on a podcast. We were doing WordCast at that point. Back in 2018, they put a data center underwater and the bottom of the ocean.
We talked about this on WordCast. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. It's probably on one of our older ones. If I can find it, I'll try and link it somewhere. But yeah, so it was an underwater data center experiment, and the experiment has concluded now. And I wanted to talk about some of the results of this because they were wildly successful. Which obviously that's the news here. Is if it was mediocre, whatever. If it was horribly failed, then we would talk about it. If it's wildly successful, I really want to talk about it, and that's the direction that this went. So only 8 out of the 855 servers failed. Now that is like amazing. That is 1/8 of the failure rate that we see in a lot of normal data centers. So that is actually more reliable and therefore more profitable for Microsoft. But also, to top that off, is more environmentally friendly because you're not having dead servers being replaced as much, which is one of the big pushes that Microsoft is using this for. It's not just cheap cooling, which I'll talk about in a second, but it's, you know, better for the environment to not take up more land and to not have as many failures and that kind of thing. And it's space that we can use that doesn't really damage things. You know, algae and stuff can grow on it, and it's okay. So these underwater data centers they're airtight. They are sealed with nitrogen as their atmosphere. So they believe that that's helped reduce corrosion, and that's part of why they had such little failure. They also believe that part of it is there's no people inside these, so there's nobody to oops. So that's pretty amazing. And obviously with these types of data centers, like the servers are your failure domain, you can have servers fail and things are fine. Like that's your failure domain. It's not on the individual drive or the individual power supply level at that point anymore. Like this unit is like the thing that can fail is servers. It's okay. 8 of the servers failing doesn't mean that they have to necessarily bring it out of the water, right? Now they have, we're getting 155 servers, 100 of them fail. Maybe that's the point where Microsoft fishes it out, takes it apart, replaces those and does some testing on the others to see what else is going to fail soon, and then resyncs it, right? So pretty amazing. And they've had no issues with power reliability, getting power underwater to it, which was one of the big concerns about it is, are we going to have issues because you have power cables underwater providing power to these data centers. So I just thought that was really, really cool. And in fact, I will try to put up, if I can find some good footage of it, some of the power washing that Microsoft did when this came out, because it was beautiful to see everything being knocked off of it. Yeah. It was interesting to have it come out of water, and it was covered in life. It was like it as evidence of it not really being that much of a disturbance. Of course, when you take it out, you have to kill everything on it. But I mean, it was covered in like algae and stuff, right? Like plant life. So
yeah,
it was pretty cool. It was pretty interesting. I was glad to see a conclusion to that. I had almost forgotten about it because I forgot it was a 2-year project. So now we'll jump into our tiny news section. This is the last little bit here. So the new Radeon RX card design was revealed in Fortnite. So that was interesting. I will put up footage of that for you guys, or just like B-roll, so you can see what the card looks like.
Think about that. That's where we are now, where graphics card designs are being unveiled in Fortnite.
Bro, there's so much stuff being unveiled in Fortnite now. Like, remember Marshmallow did the concert in Fortnite?
Concerts make more sense than graphics card.
It's true. Like, here's a graphics card in a game that's played widely by console and like mobile players.
Yeah,
it's interesting, but yeah, it's actually a really good looking card. It is not using a new power design. It is using 2 8-pins instead of the 12-pin that Nvidia has gone for, which is going to create an interesting point. Is like people buying power supplies, right? Like when you're building a new PC, right? Do you buy it with the 12-pin, or do you because if you're buying not a crazy high end one, but like 700 watts or 600 watts, it's going to have one or the other. It's going to have a 12-pin or it's going to have a couple 8-pins. It's not going to have both, unless it's modular and comes with both cables, which is maybe an option, but I think it's interesting to see that AMD's sticking with it. Yeah.
I mean, this is too new. I don't think they even had time to integrate it into these GPUs if they wanted to.
It is open as far as we know, though, right? Like other companies can use it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I believe so. And like my guess is that they probably will, because it's smaller than 2 8-pins, and it delivers more power. And so it's just like there's every reason to start doing it sooner rather than later, because you want to get power supply adopters or like manufacturers on board.
Yes.
Before you really need that much power.
Yeah, and as far as I know, we're already actually seeing some power supply companies for their modular units release cable packs that you can buy that come with the 12 pins. So
yeah, that's not surprising at all.
Which is not surprising. Now, the big thing I want to see is a place like Mainframe Customs get the pinouts and the right size cabling and right size pins and stuff, so that you can do custom sleeving, so that you can still make systems look good. But being the smaller connector and stuff is helpful for more compact systems and stuff like that too. So I have changed my mind on the move. I like it now. I didn't like it at first, which usually I'm open to change, or I try to be. At first, it kind of bugged me, but I actually think it's a good move now, as long as companies do actually start to adopt it, which is important. Like Intel, when they release their GPU, it should just have the 12-pin. And the thing is, the 12-pin's enough power for really high-end GPUs, right? And so that means it's also fine for low-end GPUs. So we might see a singular connector used across the board, which is also a benefit to people, as your power supply just has one connector. You don't have to have these weird cable splitters and stuff, and it just works on every GPU, just this single power cable.
Yeah, and then like it also makes it easier for power supply manufacturers who don't have to ship, or they can ship less cables. Which is a big part of why I think they'll want to adopt this. Is it's just like it's literally just less stuff. Yeah, you don't have to ship, either a cable that'll have excess hanging off, or cables that'll have your 2 or 3 different types of cables, that type of thing. It's literally just less.
Yeah, right. Huh. I think it's good. I just I want custom sleeving to come out for it, because my end of year plan after I get the 3090 is to do more water cooling in here, more lighting, and custom sleeving. And if the sleeving parts aren't out for it, I'm gonna be kind of disappointed, or at least like custom colored ones that I can purchase at the bare minimum would be nice, like custom colored adapters or something. But
Yeah.
so we have two more quick topics. Truenas, I wanted to talk about that. Released Truenas Core release candidate, which is out. I'm running it on my box. So it was in beta. So for those that don't know, and I'm not, if you don't know what NASs are, then okay, we will just, like, I'm not going to go into super detail or anything, but it's a network attached storage server. So FreeNAS has been a fantastic platform for a long time. It was software built on FreeBSD that you could use. And it's just an incredibly good storage platform. I use it in a professional environment, not just at home. And so Truenas Core is what FreeNAS is becoming. It's being renamed. It's the same product, but it's being renamed to make management and updates easier, which is actually going to give it more features, because now it's merged with all the teams that are working on FreeNAS, or everybody's working on Truenas now. And there's Truenas Core and Truenas Enterprise and Truenas Scale. I won't get into Scale, but it's pretty cool to see it as a release candidate now, which means like it's pretty much stable, but they're not going to put it on the stable channel until enough people use it. So that's what release candidate means. And I think it's fantastic to see. So a couple of the quick features they added, two-factor authentications in there. Haven't tried it yet, but it's in there. Performance improvements for SMB / Samba / CIFS, iSCSI and ZFS. So just performance improvements across the board. Quite a bit of updates there. There's been some parallelization of stuff and whatnot. I won't, again, get into huge detail. But I have noticed improved speeds with SMB shares. They do seem to be, I don't know, just more reliably fast. I don't know. I don't have 10 gig from this machine to my NAS, so it's hard to judge how much better, but I've noticed what seems to be less dips in the performance. So that's good. They have fusion pools now, which will actually allow you to have things like the metadata on like flash SSD storage, but still have your main data on the hard drives, which can greatly speed up certain types of workloads. And it's almost like caching in a way, but not actually caching. VPN support, they added OpenVPN as a server and client on it, which is a really cool feature for a lot of people. If it's reliable, it's actually a good thing, because a lot of times these TrueNAS systems, even like mine, their processors are really overbuilt. Like, you don't need them that powerful, but you needed a lot of lanes. So then you just have like a CPU that's sitting there at like 10% workload all the time and never going above. So being able to offload's cool. And then that's pretty much it, other than a huge pile of bug fixes.
All right. The next thing, this is just a real quick one. Google is ending the monetization of the Chrome Web Store. So like there won't be any more paid Chrome web apps or Chrome extensions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
No paid themes, anything like that.
Interesting. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know exactly what to comment on it other than it's interesting.
Yeah. You can still monetize, you just have to use a third party. Google's not doing it.
Yeah. Which in some ways is better, but
yeah, the last thing. So XP had its source code leaked. I don't know if you heard about this.
I did not. No.
Oh, yeah, their source code got leaked. And in that, somebody found a theme that looks a hell of a lot, and by a hell of a lot, I mean very much like the Aqua interface that Apple had.
Oh, I misunderstood you. Windows XP got their source code leaked. Yes, I did see that. I didn't see the theme, though.
Yeah, look at the coloring and stuff. It looks color-wise
like a Mac.
Yeah.
Whoa. Actually, I think that kind of would have been nicer in some ways than XP's style.
Yeah.
I kind of like it. Huh. That's interesting. Wow.
Yep.
And then one last thing I just remembered that I wanted to throw in here for those that stick around for the whole thing. I think there's a higher chance you're using servers and stuff. Proxmox server, somebody made a dark theme for its interface finally. It is absolutely beautiful, and I will put a link in the description for you to go get it from GitHub, because man, is it fantastic. It is so nice to have all my VMs with a freaking dark theme. Oh my goodness. So just kind of wanted to say that.
I think everything needs a neon pink theme.
You know, I want everything to have an Outrun theme. That's what I would like.
I know.
Like Doom basically has an Outrun theme for the UI that you can apply, and it's fucking beautiful. So,
yeah.
Well, there we go. This podcast is going to be approximately 3 hours at this point, Daniel. So I think we're pretty much at our limit here. We usually try not to go over the 3 hour mark, and we're at 3 hours and 20 minutes. So, but we recorded for like 20 minutes ahead of time, so we're just under. But yeah, pretty solid.
Yeah,
that was fun. I'm going to go ahead and click the stop button, everybody. Do you know that the stop button stops